So a critique almost every single LEGO set gets is that it is overpriced. Personally, I haven't really heard anyone ever say that a LEGO set is reasonably priced. So what are people actually talking about? Because surely if every single LEGO set is overpriced, that would mean none of them are overpriced.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
No matter what theme it is, people are always complaining about the price of LEGO, and something I've noticed especially recently with the release of the NES and the piano and a lot of the Star Wars line is people saying things are overpriced, but when in reality, I think it's just people complaining that LEGO's expensive. And don't get me wrong, I definitely believe that there are sets where the price is not justified by the actual set's value, but at the same time, a lot of the sets I see people calling overpriced are actually pretty reasonable. Hey guys, it's Holly, aka Potter Minifig Pals, and today we are once again talking about the price of LEGO, although this time I'm not so much complaining at LEGO for charging more for sets, I'm complaining more about the people who comment that LEGO is constantly overpriced. So this is the second video I've now made about LEGO and their pricing. In the first one, I was talking about how in Australia, sets that cost the same amount in Europe and the UK and America would cost different prices down here. But instead of talking about all that today, I want to focus on the difference between overpriced and expensive. LEGO in general is an expensive product. I am not going to deny that. However, the value and the quality of the product is definitely the best on the market, and it does justify the cost. The problem is, however, sometimes the actual build of the set doesn't look or feel like it's worth the price that LEGO charge for it. So as a whole, Star Wars is probably the most known for being overpriced. People complain about that a lot. A lot of that, however, does come down to the licensing fee. Star Wars is a very popular IP that is owned by Disney currently, and they probably charge a very hefty amount for LEGO to produce this stuff. But to LEGO, it is worth fighting and holding onto those rights because they know people want to buy these products. People have such an appetite for this stuff. It appeals to all ages, it appeals to people who loved the original trilogy, and even the younger audience who are getting into Star Wars now because their parents are introducing them to it. So it has a very wide demographic. And you can see that Star Wars definitely has a heavier licensing fee when you compare it to themes like Harry Potter or any of the Ideas IPs as well. For example, when they made the Steamboat Willie Ideas set, which is also owned by Disney, it was notably more expensive than some of the other Ideas themes like the Friends set or the Flintstones or anything like that. However, one thing I noticed when creeping up to the August 1st release date, when you pretty much had like most of the Star Wars line dropping everywhere, you had Super Mario coming out, you had the NES, you had the grand piano, you had like Lego art, all of this stuff was dropping on August 1st, and there were people who were talking about what type of sets they want to get, including myself. On Twitter and on YouTube, I'd see a lot of people saying, oh no, I'm not gonna get the grand piano or the NES, they're overpriced, like I'm not gonna get it. Now looking at the grand piano especially, because I feel like this is the best example to explain what I'm trying to talk about, the price of the piano is the same cost as the average Australian rent per week. So when you compare it to something like that, it does look overpriced, as the piano at the end of the day is just a bunch of plastic bricks. However, the piano is a very particular case because it has power functions / powered up elements, which means there's a lot of technology involved in creating this thing. And because when the idea got selected off LEGO Ideas, LEGO really wanted to make this piano play actual music, and that when you pressed a key, a note would go off and play a song. So in doing that, you now also have research and development costs. It would have taken the LEGO group a very long time to develop and research and figure out how that whole system was going to work. Then you've got the powered up elements themselves, which can be very expensive and can cost around $30 to $40 a piece depending on which part you go for. Then you've got the cost of the actual bricks. Now assuming every element is already in the correct color and style that LEGO want, you wouldn't have any costs there. However, I do believe that there were some recolored pieces and there was a few specialized printed elements for the first time, which would raise the cost up there too. Then, because it is a very large LEGO set, you need to have a second white box to divide up all the bags, which then increase the cost of packaging. And then because it's a very large model as well, you're going to need more paper and a lot more ink to print on that paper. Then finally, going back to the fact that the piano does actually play music, LEGO had to develop an entire app to be able to play these songs. And app development is very expensive and can take a very long time to iron out all the bugs and problems with it. If any of you have ever tried coding like myself, you would know that it is very hard to develop things like this. So putting all of these factors together, that gives us then the cost to actually produce the piano. Then as well, because this is a Lego idea set, the original designer will get a portion of the profits, which is probably something Lego does account into on their Lego idea sets, because at the end of the day, Lego is a business. They want to make money. They need to have a reasonable profit margin. So then you tack on how much profit there is. So adding on the profit margin, we now have an even higher price. But that's not all. It needs to go higher because we need to account for the distribution and shipping fees of this set. Because it is a very large set and has a very large box, you're not going to be able to ship as many of them out as you would something like a $50 tiny box. So now putting all of these things together, we have our final retail price. So when you account for all those factors, the piano doesn't really look so overpriced anymore. However, it does remain expensive. You can't change that fact. It is a lot of money to spend on something that's probably just going to be a display piece and that you might like play around with once in a while just to show off to people who ask about it if they come and visit your house. Now, I don't own the piano, so I can't personally speak on whether or not I think it's worth the value. Something I do own though, however, is the Disney castle. It sits in the background and I was very hesitant to buy the set for a long time because it was expensive. This first came out when I was 16 and I thought it was overpriced at the time, and I knew as well it was expensive. For 3 or 4 years, I found it very hard to bring myself to actually buy it just because of how expensive it was. And for a lot of people, you probably wouldn't buy that set because you wouldn't think it was worth it. To me, however, I have a very personal attachment with the Disneyland park, so I really wanted to get it. It was also going to be an activity just to kind of de-stress and just relax and give me something to do. And even though this set is expensive, to me personally, I think its value is there. Because although Lego is a great display item and a toy, they are also great investments. Lego rarely depreciates in value. It's not like a car or technology where it tends to go down very rapidly in price because technology is always advancing. And while Lego's always advancing, there is also the element of supply and demand. While Lego will remake some sets occasionally, they don't do it too often, and when they do, they're not exactly the same. There's always changes and upgrades in minifigures and printing and things like that. So when reading a lot of comments about things like the piano and the NES and like a lot of other very expensive Lego sets and people saying they're overpriced, often I believe that people are just getting that mixed up with them being expensive. So we've talked about the overall cost of the piano and why I believe that it's not overpriced. So let's now talk about a set that I think a lot of people agree is overpriced, and that is General Grievous's Starfighter from 2020. Just like the grand piano, I don't own this set. I've looked at that set in stores and I've debated buying it, but the one thing that holds me back is that I do think it is overpriced purely based on what I perceive its value to be. I've only just started collecting Lego Star Wars this year, so I don't have a General Grievous and I would really like to get one. I could buy one off Bricklink, but at the moment I haven't found one that I'm really happy to purchase. So I've been thinking about getting General Grievous's Starfighter. From watching people's reviews and looking at pictures of it, the actual ship looks amazing. It looks really good. I think it's very accurate. I love the features of it. I think they did a good job. However, it does look very small for the price you're paying. The lack of value, however, can usually be made up with the minifigure selection. However, in this case, they're not that great. Firstly, we have General Grievous, who isn't a new figure, but he still does look really good. I think they've done a great job with him. I love this version of General Grievous. I really don't think they needed to change anything either, so the exclusivity of this figure doesn't really bother me at all. Then you have Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is where me and a lot of other people have a problem with this set. Because this figure is from the $20 set Jewel on Mustafar, which wouldn't be a problem besides the fact that that character is supposed to have a bunch of rips on his robes because he is battling Anakin. This scene takes place at the very end of the film. However, the scene that the General Grievous Starfighter is set from is set considerably ahead of that in the story. Obi-Wan did not have any rips on his robes at this point, so therefore he shouldn't have this torso print. If the figure they reused in this set didn't have the rips, it would be fine. I'm not asking for an exclusive Obi-Wan. In the Jewel on Mustafar set, I would say that you need an exclusive Obi-Wan because you want all those rips. The main problem with Obi-Wan is that it's not accurate to the story. And because it is a minifigure torso as well, it doesn't require any new molding or any recoloring. You just need a new print for it, which for a theme like Star Wars, you have the budget to do. So with General Grievous and Obi-Wan out the way, surely we would have an amazing third figure. But instead, we'd get a regular Airborne clone trooper. And while I think this clone trooper looks really nice, it's a wasted spot. While the ship looks very accurate, it looks very small at the same time, and I just don't think it looks like something that I should be spending 120 Australian dollars on, especially when I can buy Privet Drive for $100 and get 3 exclusive characters to the set. And the value for this set would be even less if you already have a General Grievous. Since I personally don't, the ship does look pretty appealing to me. I don't have a Starfighter, I don't have a General Grievous, I do have that Obi-Wan, and I don't really care too much for the Airborne Clone Trooper, but I do think he's cool and I don't have one. But unless I can find that set discounted, I don't think I'm going to be buying it. One aspect that affects this a lot as well is how much disposable income one has. For some people, it's easier to justify buying things like a designer belt or a jacket, just like it is with buying larger sets from Lego. So factors like that will also affect how people view Lego, if it's expensive or overpriced. At the end of the day, we all have very different opinions, and that is all fine. However, I do think people just need to say that they think a Lego set is expensive instead of just saying it's overpriced all the time. Because just because Lego is an expensive product doesn't mean that it's necessarily overpriced all the time. Let me know a Lego set which you think is overpriced and why exactly you do believe that. I'm really interested to know. For me, definitely General Grievous' Starfighter is one. Also, none of these opinions involve the price per piece ratio because personally I don't really care about it. I don't think it matters that much. Of course, if it's lower, that's great, because a set's value to me doesn't really come from how many pieces there are. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, I'll see you later.